Take me to the cafe where you and Dad used to go before you got married.
My daughter, Karen, begged me, so the three of us, Karen, my husband Mike, and I headed to that cafe full of memories.
Mom and Dad, you were close even before I was born, right?
Was that the case? What do you think?
Well, I don't remember anything from that long ago.
After a while, the server brought over 2 large puddings. 15 years ago, when Mike and I were dating, we used to eat this pudding a lot. By the way, it's been exactly 15 years since we got married. The moment I said that, I realized something and checked the date on my phone. Could it be that today is?
Mom, Dad, happy 15th anniversary.
I was deeply touched by my daughter's unexpected surprise.
Mom, Dad, I hope you stay close forever.
I was so glad that Karen had grown into such a kind daughter. Yeah, it's delicious. The pudding you treated us to, Karen, is really good. When I shared my farts with a big smile, Karen smiled back warmly. Karen is growing up so fast, before we even realize it. As I said that, I glanced over at Mike. At that moment, I decided that today would be the last day I would remain a part of this family. My name is Lydia Hurst, and I'm 40 years old. I work part-time at a local grocery store, living with my husband Mike and our daughter Karen. Both Mike and I have always loved kids, so we naturally dreamed of having children once we got married. However, years went by after our wedding, and we still couldn't have a child.
Some things are just beyond our control,
Mike would say, trying to comfort me, but as time passed, I began to feel more and more anxious. Even though we went to the doctor and found no issues with either of us. Knowing that it was still possible, Mike and I often visited the nearby church to pray whenever we had the chance. Mike was always supportive, but his parents treated me harshly.
Lydia, still no kids? We don't know how much longer we have, and we'd love to see a cute grandchild soon.
Every time my mother-in-law visited our apartment, she would greet me with these words. At first, her tone was gentle, but as time went on and there were no results, her words became increasingly harsh.
I heard Mike's classmate just had their 3rd child. Their oldest is already in middle school. What's going on with Mike? He doesn't have even 1 child yet.
I began to dread my mother-in-law's indirect criticism about my inability to have children. My father-in-law shared the same views.
We had Mike about a year after we got married, right? Lydia, how long has it been since you and Mike got married?
9 years.
And still no kids.
Every time we met, all I could do was apologize to them.
In the old days, a wife who couldn't have children was immediately divorced and sent away. Nowadays, it's a much more forgiving time, isn't it?
Yeah, the world's men are too soft on their wives, and that's why the birth rate isn't increasing.
Dad, Mom, enough already.
Mike stepped in between us, defending me as he always did. Especially when the topic of children came up.
Lydia wants a child just as much as you do. She's watching her diet, and we even go to the church to pray. Please, stop saying things that push her to the edge.
Upon hearing this, My mother-in-law sneered.
If she's doing all that and still can't have a child, then maybe there's something wrong with Lydia, don't you think?
What do you mean by that? There's nothing wrong with Lydia. The doctors said so.
My mother-in-law looked at Mike with a very surprised expression, saying, "Well, isn't it obvious?"
If children are a gift from God, then by now, she should have had at least one or two. The fact that she hasn't must mean something is wrong with Lydia.
Yeah, she's right. It must be because Lydia's behavior is somehow bad.
My in-laws nodded in agreement.
What century are you living in? Don't pressure Lydia with such unscientific nonsense. Dad, Mom, don't interfere with our lives anymore.
With a strong push, Mike showed his parents out of our home.
You don't have to worry about what my parents said, Lydia.
Mike comforted me with his kind words, and I managed to face the reality of infertility treatment instead of running away. Apparently, Mike had been researching ways to have children online in his own way. Whenever he found new information, he would suggest, "How about this?" or "Maybe we should try this." Desperate, I tried everything I could get my hands on. Whether it was those efforts or something else, in our 10th year of marriage, I finally became pregnant with our first child.
Thank you, Mike. Without your support, I might have given up on having children by now. I might have run away from the harsh reality.
What are you talking about? You're the one who's been working so hard, Lydia. I just did what I could. Honestly, I don't care if it's a boy or a girl. Just make sure it's a healthy baby.
Even when I felt overwhelmed by the anxiety of my first pregnancy, just feeling Mike's presence close by always gave me courage. Then, as the new year passed and spring arrived, I successfully gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Mike and I wanted our child to grow up to be pure and kind, so we named our daughter Karen. Holding our newborn baby in my arms, her eyes, nose, and mouth were still so tiny and not fully formed. Everything about her felt so precious to me. She was born as ours, and she was now sleeping soundly in my arms. I vowed that I would overcome any hardship to ensure her leads a happy life. Feeling her tiny heartbeat and breathing, I swore to protect Karen with all my might.
When I look at her sleeping face, she looks just like you, Lydia.
You can't tell yet. But her ears look just like yours, don't they?
Really? I think her nose looks like yours. This girl is going to be a beauty when she grows up.
Just then, there was a knock on the hospital room door, and Mike's parents entered without a smile. The happiness in my heart started to cloud over like a dark storm.
Congratulations, Lydia. You finally gave birth.
It was as if she was implying that I had been refusing to have a child until now. Still, I decided to greet them with a big smile. Surely, once they saw their grandchild's face, their expressions would soften a little. Somewhere in my heart, I hoped for that. But the moment my mother-in-law looked at Karen's face, she sneered, "Is this what we waited 10 years for?" I'm completely dumbfounded, and she didn't even try to touch Karen.
If you're going to have a child, make sure it's a boy next time. This is just ridiculous.
My mother-in-law dramatically placed her hand on her forehead and sighed.
Well, this time it's a girl, but next time, be sure to have a boy. We're counting on you.
It's as if Karen, born as a girl, doesn't even matter to you. Did you come here just to say that?
That's not it. We're simply looking forward to a boy who can carry on the family name.
It doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl, as long as the child is born healthy.
I tugged at Mike's sleeve, stopping him from getting angrier.
I'm sorry, I couldn't meet your expectations. I'm really sorry.
Lydia, make sure you reflect on this and have a fine boy next time. Although, considering your age, I'm not holding my breath.
With that, Mike's parents left the hospital room.
What in the world are they thinking? I'm sorry, Lydia.
You don't have to apologize, Mike. But, thank you.
Their heartless words toward Karen and me were deeply hurtful. Even so, Mike's understanding of my feelings was the only solace I had. Despite that, his parents continued to belittle both Karen and me at every opportunity. My mother-in-law seemed to think that I was a disgrace to the Hearst family for not giving birth to a boy. She even hated the idea of introducing newborn Karen to the relatives. At a memorial service, when one of the relatives congratulated us, my mother-in-law rushed over and said, "Unfortunately, it's not a boy," and forcefully changed the subject.
By the way, do you have enough food? More guests might come, so we should probably prepare more beer. It's embarrassing, so please don't show your face in front of the relatives. There's an empty room next door, so stay there with Karen and play.
My mother-in-law treated Karen and me like nuisances, physically removing us from her sight. 3 years passed, and Mike's attitude began to change as well. Previously, Mike had been supportive, but he started coming home late, citing work, and spent more time away from home on his days off. At first, I brushed it off, thinking he was just busy with work, but soon, he became cold not only towards me but also towards Karen. One evening, when the front door opened, Karen, who had been reading a picture book, tossed it aside and ran out of the room to hug her beloved dad's leg. In the past, Mike would have said, "Hey, Karen, I'm home. Were you a good girl?" and picked her up with a smile. But now, without even a hint of a smile, Mike said, "I'm tired. Lydia, get Karen off me," and forcibly pried Karen off his leg. But Karen, undeterred, asked, "Dad, can you hold me?"
Be quiet. You're giving me a headache. If you don't stop, I'll throw you out of the house.
Shocked by the drastic change in her beloved dad, Karen began to cry. It's okay. I know you were scared, but it's all right." After calming Karen down, I looked at Mike. "I don't know what's going on at work, but you don't have to take it out on Karen."
Shut up. What do you know? Don't talk down to me unless you've given birth to a boy.
Mike had changed so much that he was unrecognizable from the man he had been 3 years ago. "Why would you say that? You sound just like your parents."
I've realized something after having a child. My parents weren't wrong after all.
With a sigh, Mike loosened his tie and said, "I'm not hungry. I'm going out," and left the house without even changing clothes.
Where did Dad go? Is it because Karen was a bad girl? Does he not like me anymore?
No, that's not true. Dad still loves Karen more than anyone else in the world. I tried to convince myself that it was just the stress from work or a temporary lapse in judgment, but Mike's attitude didn't soften. In contrast, he began complaining more and more, not just about my parenting and housework, but about everything, despite how busy I was with raising Karen, doing housework, and working part-time. With Mike having completely changed, and my own exhaustion from taking care of Karen, I started to seriously think about divorce. Karen, do you love Dad?
Me love Dad a lot. But I love Mom too. Don't you love Dad, Mom?
Looking into Karen's pure, innocent eyes, I couldn't bring myself to go through with the divorce. Maybe Mike would return to the kind man he once was, and maybe one day I would be able to reconcile with my in-laws. I could only hope, but Mike's attitude remained cold, and my relationship with his parents stayed strained. Mike stopped coming home regularly, and even on Karen's 5th birthday, he didn't send a single message.
Is Dad working today too?
Karen asked sadly as she sat in front of her birthday cake. Yes, he is. Dad loves Karen so much. He's working hard every day because he wants to see you happy.
Dad is so cool.
Here you go. This is a gift from Dad, I said as I handed her the teddy bear I had bought myself.
Wow, it's so cute. I'm so glad Dad is my dad.
By this time, Mike had stopped putting most of his salary into our joint account. In fact, I even noticed that the balance was slowly decreasing without my knowledge. Could he really be? My distrust towards Mike grew stronger with each passing day. Worried that our living situation might become unsustainable, I made some rules with Karen. We agreed to turn off the lights when not in use, go to bed by 9 p.m., and borrow books from the library if she wanted to read anything. I also tried to cut down on living expenses as much as possible, while increasing my part-time work without it affecting my child care duties.
Mom, are you okay? Eh? You look tired.
I hadn't realized it, but apparently, I had started furrowing my brow. I smiled back at her. I'm fine, Karen, don't worry. When I patted Karen's head, she gave me a smile, although it was more awkward than mine. To think that I was making my young daughter worry. I felt an overwhelming sense of inadequacy as a mother. Around this time, my mother-in-law started picking up and dropping off Karen whenever I was tied up with work. I'm sorry to bother you.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. Karen is our precious granddaughter too.
What could have caused this change of heart? I couldn't help but feel uneasy about my mother-in-law's sudden change, considering she had previously avoided both Karen and me. Still, I had no choice but to accept the help. One Sunday morning, after finishing breakfast cleanup, I suggested, Karen, since Mom doesn't have work today, why don't we go out and play somewhere, hoping to bring back Karen's natural smile. Karen quickly ran over to me with sparkling eyes.
Mom, Dad doesn't have work today either, right? I want to go out to eat with both of you.
I'm okay with that, but I looked over at Mike, who was sitting on the living room sofa reading the newspaper.
Dad, please. Let's go out to eat something delicious, just the three of us.
I'm tired. If you want to go out, you two can go by yourselves.
But I want to go with both Mom and Dad. Just this once, please?
Even Mike couldn't refuse when his daughter begged him like that.
Fine, just for today.
He sighed lightly and folded up the newspaper. Karen seemed to have a specific place in mind.
I heard from Sally. It's the cafe where you and Dad used to go a lot. Take me there.
Sally was a former co-worker of mine who still visited occasionally after I left the company when I got married.
Honestly, she's always saying unnecessary things.
Mike clicked his tongue lightly as he gripped the steering wheel.
Mom and Dad, you were really close before I was born, right?
Were we? What do you think?
There's no way I could remember something from that long ago.
Mike ended the conversation abruptly, but my face softened as I reminisced about those times.
Oh. Mom, you're smiling.
Noticing that Karen saw me, I covered my face with both hands, embarrassed.
That's creepy. Why are you so embarrassed?
Mike scolded me, and the nostalgic feeling disappeared in an instant. When we entered the cafe, there was a reserved sign on a table by the window. Karen pulled my hand and said, "This way," rushing over to the table. "Karen, that's a reserved table."
I called Sally earlier, and she reserved it for us.
I couldn't help but laugh at how determined Karen was. Mike, however, seemed completely uninterested in his daughter's efforts, his eyes glued to his phone. After we sat down for a while, the server brought over 2 large puddings. 15 years ago, when Mike and I were dating, we often visited this cafe and ate these puddings. Back then, they were priced at $1.95 each, and the size and shape hadn't changed at all. Seeing them brought a nostalgic smile to my face. Looking at this pudding, doesn't it remind us of when we were younger? Mike didn't even glance at the pudding, still engrossed in his phone. By the way, it's our 15th wedding anniversary today. As soon as I said that, I realized something. I quickly checked the date on my phone. Could it be that today is...
Mom, Dad, happy 15th anniversary.
My heart warmed at my daughter's unexpected surprise. Thank you, Karen. But despite there being 3 of us, the third pudding never arrived. It's taking a while. Karen, why don't you go ahead and eat this pudding? But Karen shook her head vigorously.
This one's for Mom. It's your anniversary today, so I'm paying for it. That's why I'm not eating it.
I tilted my head in confusion. Karen, where did you get the money? I had never given Karen any allowance before.
Grandma gave it to me. She said it was a reward for cleaning the bathroom and the garden. After coming home from preschool, I cleaned Grandma's house every day for 10 cents each time. Isn't that amazing?
Karen answered proudly, but I felt a sense of unease. Did you want to do it on your own, or did Grandma tell you to do it?
I wanted to give you a present for your anniversary. So Grandma said I should help clean the house. I really wanted to eat the pudding too, but when I asked the store staff, they said I could only buy 2 with the money I had. I'll work harder next time so I can buy my own.
Hearing Karen speak with such determination, I felt more sadness than joy.
Mom, Dad, I hope you stay close forever.
I couldn't hold back my tears in response to Karen's earnest wish. Even at her young age, she couldn't bear to see the strained relationship between Mike and me. No matter how much Mike distanced himself from Karen and me, to Karen, Mike was her one and only father in the world. For a daughter, it's natural to hope that her parents are close and happy together. I was painfully reminded of my shortcomings as a mother, having made Karen worry so much. Karen, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness, but how about you eat this pudding?
No, that's not mine. It's Mom's pudding. Why won't you eat it?
Karen started to pout, on the verge of tears, and I panicked. Sorry, yes, this is Mom's pudding, I said, taking a spoonful and bringing it to my mouth. Yum, it's delicious. The pudding you treated me to, Karen, is really delicious. When I shared my farts with a big smile, Karen finally smiled back, satisfied. After eating half of the pudding, I pushed the rest of the plate towards Karen. Wow, that was so good, but Mom is full now, so you can finish the rest, Karen.
Oh, fine, if I have to.
Karen said, happily starting to eat the remaining pudding. She must have really wanted to eat it herself. Even so, she had fought her desire to eat it, just to celebrate our wedding anniversary. I was so glad that Karen had grown into such a kind daughter. Karen is growing up so fast, before we even realize it. I glanced at Mike. But Mike hadn't touched his pudding at all, leaving it pushed to the edge of the table, while still staring at his phone. Why don't you eat a little? Karen went to all this trouble to treat us, after all.
Well, why don't you eat it? I'm not in the mood for eating right now.
I was stunned by Mike's blunt response. Didn't you hear what Karen said?
I heard something about it being our anniversary or whatever. Sorry, I was thinking about something else.
Then Mike pushed the pudding towards Karen.
Did you really think adults would enjoy something as sweet as pudding? Here, Karen, this is for you.
There's no need to say it like that. You should just appreciate Karen's kindness.
Well, I'd be a lot happier staying home and sleeping than being treated to pudding.
I couldn't suppress my anger at Mike's nerve, being so indifferent without even thanking his daughter. Is that how you treat your daughter? Mike didn't even glance up from his phone and continued to ignore us.
Dad, do you hate me?
Tears welled up in Karen's eyes as she realized her father wasn't paying attention to her. Sorry, Dad's busy right now, so don't talk to me.
I want to go home.
Karen's voice trembled as she spoke.
Yeah, let's go home.
Mike stood up casually, not noticing Karen's feelings at all. A father with no trace of kindness like this isn't someone Karen needs. All my feelings toward Mike vanished in an instant. Even after we got home, Karen's bright morning demeanor had completely changed. She remained downcast the entire time. Mike was so glued to his phone that he didn't even notice our daughter's change in mood. I opened the drawer in the room, quickly stashed the emergency savings I had been secretly saving since we got married into my handbag, and rushed out of the house to the detective agency in the neighboring town. A month later, I was called to the detective agency, where the investigator revealed a shocking truth to me.
Your husband is definitely cheating.
Photos of Mike enjoying meals with a young woman and entering and leaving a hotel were spread across the desk. So, it was as I suspected. Somewhere deep down, I had been preparing myself for this. Seeing those photos didn't shake me at all. What did surprise me was that Mike wasn't just involved with one woman.
It seems there wasn't just one particular woman. He's been using dating apps and social media to hook up with women, and most of these encounters were just one-time flings.
Still, the fact that Mike had betrayed both Karen and me remained unchanged. I immediately went to pick up Karen from preschool, and instead of returning home, we headed straight to the train station.
Aren't we going home?
Grandma and Grandpa are waiting for us. They are really excited to see you, Karen.
What about Dad? Isn't he coming with us?
I couldn't bring myself to answer her question. When we arrived at my parents' house, I immediately mailed the completed divorce papers to Mike.
What do you mean, divorce?
3 days later, it seemed Mike had received the papers, and he called me. What do you think it means?
Don't mess around. Just bring Karen and come home right now.
Neither Karen or I have any intention of ever returning to your house. Without reflecting on his actions, Mike began to blame Karen and me.
Just take back the divorce. If you come back now, I'll forgive you this time. As soon as we hang up, come home. Got it? Understand?
Are you done talking?
You.
I know about your secret meetings with multiple women. I have plenty of evidence. I could hear the panic in Mike's voice on the other end of the line. The cheating is one thing, but what I can't forgive is how you've treated Karen.
What do you mean? How I treated her?
You haven't contributed to the household income for years. On top of that, you've been withdrawing large sums of money from our joint account every month. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Wasn't that account something we agreed to set up together for Karen's future? And you've been dipping into it. What on earth were you thinking?
I was just borrowing a little. I was going to pay it back.
Mike hastily made an excuse, but the amount was far too large, and the duration far too long, for it to be just a little borrowing. You've been buying expensive gifts for women you fancy, haven't you? I know all about it. I have nothing more to say to you. Just then, Karen came over and leaned close to the phone.
I hate you, Dad. Bye-bye, Dad.
Karen, how about we go to the amusement park tomorrow with Dad?
Mike was still saying something, but I hung up the phone and immediately blocked his number. Since Mike and his parents refused to accept the divorce, the matter went to court. The reason Mike resisted the divorce wasn't out of lingering feelings for me or Karen, but because he was worried about how it would look to others. However, the evidence of Mike's infidelity, which I had the detective gather, was the decisive factor, and my case was fully upheld. Ironically, Mike's affair began when he was researching fertility treatments. He happened to come across an ad for a dating app on social media. At first, he looked at the app out of curiosity but ended up finding a woman he liked. He began exchanging light messages with her, just to distract himself from his daily stress. But eventually, he lost control and started meeting with her in person.
I never imagined meeting so many different women could be so much fun.
Once he realized he had lost the case, Mike muttered this in a resigned tone. I was also granted custody of Karen, and now she is living peacefully at my parents' house, where they are watching over her. It turns out that my mother-in-law's insistence on making a 5-year-old do housework had been the subject of bad rumors in the neighborhood for some time. Neighbors had even witnessed her forcing Karen to redo the cleaning whenever she found even a few dead leaves in the garden, despite Karen crying and refusing. When I learned that my mother-in-law's sudden change of heart towards Karen was only to use her as a servant, I couldn't stop my tears. To make matters even more pressing for them, after I divorced Mike and took Karen with me, the scrutiny and criticism towards Mike's parents from those around them only intensified. Mike and his parents, now living with the weight of their guilt, still had to work under the cold stares of their colleagues to pay the alimony and child support owed to me and Karen. On the other hand, my parents adore Karen with all their hearts.
You'll be in elementary school soon. How about we go backpack shopping together this Saturday? Or would you rather go to the aquarium?
Tonight, let's have a barbecue with the vegetables Grandpa harvested. Karen, I know it's your favorite, so make sure you eat a lot.
In the beginning, Karen sometimes cried out of loneliness for her father, but lately, my parents have been doing everything they can to bring back her smile, trying to fill that void. Thanks to them, Karen has stopped putting on those forced, unnatural smiles to make me feel better. Now, she shows a truly genuine, childlike, and sweet smile from the bottom of her heart. As I watch Karen's radiant smile, I'm filled with a deep desire to protect her pure, gentle spirit forever.